there was an old farmer who would have his grandson in all summer long, and he would work on the farm. And he lived a meager life, and he just had an old farmhouse and some animals and farmed the land, and had one field that was full of rocks. And the son said, all I ever did the whole summer was take a flatbed trailer and an old mule and throw rocks that had washed down by the rain out of that field. He said all of his childhood, he would go stay at Granddad's, and most of the day would be spent moving rocks in and throwing them out of that field. They never could get a harvest from that one field. There was a harvest everywhere else, but not in that one field. And finally, the old grandpa died, and this is a true story. The man said that he buried his grandfather on the other side of the road of that field in the old home place, in a little plot, family plot that they had had for years and generations. And about 20 years later, this man happened to go back home to a family reunion with the rest of the family that was still alive. And he said they all, after eating and having a good time, said, let's go over to the home place. They had sold it all, sold the farm, everything. And the new owner had it, and when they got there, they were astonished. The old farm place and old home place was gone, and a beautiful, beautiful home with landscape and gorgeous home, and the old outhouse was gone, and the old smokehouse was gone, and everything, the old barn was gone, and a brand new, beautiful barn had been built, and fences and everything just perfect. And he said the thing that astonished him the most was this one field that all of his childhood he had picked rocks up with his granddaddy and thrown them in the back of that old wagon. He said it was full of corn, and it had corn stalks that were 7 feet tall. And he said, I didn't ask for permission, but he said something came over me, and he thought, I have to show this to Grandpa. And he tore down one of those corn stalks, and he took a cob of that corn and some of it and walked across the street and laid it on his granddad's gravesite. And he said, Granddad, I just wanted you to know that your generation picked up rocks so that this generation could eat corn. And we never got to eat it. You never got to eat it. You never saw it. There are things that one generation picks up rocks for so that the next generation could eat corn. And it ought to make you thankful for somebody that's coming to your mind that has picked up rocks so you don't have to do that kind of stuff. And with bloody hands and with war and with fighting and with calloused hands, the rocky fields have been cleared so that you can eat the corn. And you don't need to squander. The same is true for this nation. There are those who picked up the rocks so that we could eat the corn. In Matthew 13 and verse 38, Jesus said the world is the field in the parable that he taught. And God uses people to go into these worthless fields that are nothing but filled with rocks. And he says, pick them up and make them into something fruitful and powerful. God lets one generation eat corn if another generation will pick up rocks. You and I are picking up rocks even here this morning so that the next generation can eat corn. Now, I want you to lean in because this is important. Haggai 2 said, God said, the silver and the gold are mine. The problem is when Jesus showed up in the flesh, he never had any money, even though he said the silver and the gold, all of it is mine. You'd think if you owned all of it, that when Jesus showed up, you'd take a few bars and put it in your backpack of gold or silver. You'd take some diamonds and rubies and put them in your pocket since you own it all. And there's nothing that you don't own. He never had money. He's like some of your friends. He just never had money. When it's time to pay the bill, he never had money because he didn't carry money in his pockets. He carried people. The Apostle Paul said, I'm willing to spend and be spent. He carried people. And it's so important that you understand that who you are, this new generation, that I believe what has happened this week is even prophetic in that it is going to have a triggering effect on a new generation to stand up and to do what is right and to take back this nation and love God and believe that we can see a worldwide revival for Jesus Christ of souls like we have never seen. Do you know that when Jesus wanted to feed the 5,000, he didn't have any money, but he had a person who had 3 loaves and some fish. And when it was time to pay his taxes, not his Herod's tax, this was the temple tax. And the temple tax is said in the book of Leviticus was a half a shekel if you were 20 years of age or over. 20 years of age or over. If you weren't there, you didn't have to, just like you don't have to pay your taxes to a certain point, you did not have to pay the temple tax. The temple had a tax of half a shekel for each person. And Jesus told him, he said, Lord, what are we going to do? We don't have any resources to pay our taxes. And there was only 2 that he was talking about, Jesus, and that was Simon Peter. Simon Peter was the next to the oldest. Jesus was 30 years old, between 30 and 33 when this miracle happened. So he was 30, in his 30s. And Simon Peter would have been the next oldest, and he was the only disciple that we know was married. This is just a historical fact. He was married. We know he was married because when his mother had a fever, Jesus healed her in the city of Capernaum. The rest of them were single. Unless we can find no examples of the other disciples being married. As a matter of fact, think with me, Jesus said to Simon Peter, you go down and you take a hook and put it in the water, you'll catch a fish, open his mouth, and there'll be 1 shekel. Pay a half a shekel for me and pay a half a shekel for you because you're over 20 and I'm over 20. But what about the other 11 disciples? I'm telling you that in spite of what the old pictures look like, a bunch of old guys with gray beards and stuff, they were teenagers. They were probably 18, 19, 17. They were teenagers. Jesus said, I'm going to change the world with a new generation. And I'm a 30-year-old leader, and I've got Simon Peter, the rock that I'm going to use, and I'm going to use a bunch of teenagers, a bunch of young people. And that's why 2 Timothy said, chapter 4 said, let no man despise your youth. Don't let anybody tell you you're too young to make a difference. Don't let anybody tell you in your youth that you can't dream. And Charlie Kirk has the attention of the nation and the world, and he was 31 years old. He started building Turning Point USA when he was 18. He did not have a college education. He did not have everything going for him that other people had. He had a brilliant mind. He had a great gift in communication, and he took what he had and he turned it into something that would touch the entire world in 31 years. 31 years. Just like Martin Luther King. Just like JFK, God is spending people. When God spends someone like Martin Luther King, like Charlie Kirk, totally maybe different messages and purposes, but God let them be spent. Anytime God spends someone, it's because he's buying someone. And I believe he let Charlie Kirk be spent because he was buying a generation. A generation that would be strong and courageous. that would not waver anymore and still kind of want to be just like the world and have the morals of the world and the same spirit of the world. We need to be like Jesus.